I never told you to put your life on hold. The words he said to me like they were a kindness, like he was handing me back something I'd left at his place. Instead, it was a hard truth that I had to sit with. People want this to be the moment it happened, the night everything changed. It wasn't. This wasn't the night I changed. It was the night the last thing holding me in place finally let go, and I'd been working it loose for at least a year without admitting it. And the thing about a sentence like that is it doesn't hurt as much when it hits. The real pain comes later, at 2 in the morning, when the apartment is quiet and you finally have nothing left to argue with. That's when it finds you. Not as a thought, as a temperature. The bed goes cold on the side he was never staying on anyway, and the sentence just sits there in the dark with you, patient, repeating itself until you stop being able to pretend it didn't mean exactly what it meant. That was where I was the night this part of the story starts. 2 in the morning, no tears left, which is a different state than calm, though they look alike from across a room. The laptop was open, throwing that blue light up onto my face, the only thing awake in the apartment besides me. 3 folders were open inside it, and I was naming them the boring way you name things you don't want anybody to look at twice. For 2 years I had been Aaron Greer's, his secret, his comfort, his pressure valve, his amenity, and somewhere between his sentence and the silence that followed it, I had quietly stopped being his anything. I had become my own project. This is the part of the story where I stopped bleeding love like Leona Lewis and started rewriting the plot. I'm not going to pretend it's the part where I became a good person. Not that I'm a bad one. I just know I am self-serving above all else, and I had spent 2 years serving somebody who'd never once returned the favor. It's the part where I got organized. Let me be clear about what I decided, because I decided it on purpose, and I'd like the credit. I did not decide to leave Aaron. Not yet. Leaving him while I had nothing would have been the most expensive kind of pride, the kind you can't put back once you've spent it. Imani had told me 2 years and a lifetime ago that a man leaves when staying costs him more than going. I finally understood that the same arithmetic applied to me. I was not going to leave the affair until leaving paid better than staying. People think a decision like that arrives loud. A slammed door, a thrown glass, a woman finally screaming the thing she's swallowed for years. Mine arrived at a kitchen counter at sunrise, over coffee I'd made for one, on no sleep, while Aaron's toothbrush still sat in my bathroom like it had rights. I'd apologized the night before. Called him after the fight, sweet as anything. Told him I'd overreacted and I just wanted us to be okay, and let him go to bed thinking he'd won. Then I stayed up till morning, not crying, not pacing, just sitting with the laptop and the cold coffee, working. The phone lit up around 7. Good morning, beautiful. Told you we'd be fine. Proud of you for hearing me. Proud of me for hearing him. I read it twice, not because it hurt, but because it was funny. The specific kind of funny only a man who has won an argument nobody else was having can be. He thought he'd settled something. He had no idea the only thing that had settled was me, into a decision he wasn't going to like. I typed back a heart. Then I sat there with the cold coffee and the open laptop and thought very calmly, the way you'd think about a renovation. All right, what do I actually have to work with here? What I decided was simpler and colder than revenge. Other women get settlements. Other women get the ring or the house, or at least a damn apology with their name spelled right on it. I was going to get something too. I just had to build it myself, out of the only materials he'd left lying around. And here's the thing about being a designer. You learn to look at a room nobody else sees the value in, and you find what's already there to work with. Good bones under bad paint. A view somebody covered with a curtain. I had spent my whole career doing that for other people's houses. I had never once done it for my own life. So I looked at what Aaron had actually given me, and I stopped seeing gifts and started seeing inventory. A beautiful apartment, paid for out of an account I'd never been curious enough to examine. A closet full of clothes that fit rooms I'd just started to belong in. 2 years of receipts, transfers, and hotel confirmations I'd been quietly filing without admitting why. And a front row seat to a man who'd built an entire brand telling the world how to be loyal. It was, I realized, an enormous amount of material. He'd handed me every bit of it himself and called it generosity, and never once considered what a woman with a good eye might build out of the things he left lying around. I was going to make all of it count. I opened the book again for the first time in 2 years, a few weeks after the reality bitch slapped me, and, it opened me right back. 200 abandoned pages, the novel I kept closing every time a client needed a different shade of white. I'd left the main character stranded in a chapter I couldn't finish, because back then I hadn't lived the ending yet. Now I was living the ending in real time. I sat down at 2 in the morning and I wrote 4,000 words before the sun came up, and not one of them scared me, because the thing that used to scare me had already happened. She wasn't me, the woman in the book. I want to be careful about that, because lawyers read things too. She was a stylist with a penchant for high-paying clients. He was a record executive, not a podcaster with a gym addiction. A different city, same weather. But she was close enough to me that writing her felt like pressing on a bruise to check if it was still there. And you know damn well it's still there. Every lie he'd told me became a scene. Every hotel became a setting with a different name, lit a way I already knew, because I'd lain awake in it. Every excuse, the launch, the valuation, the timing that was never ever right became dialogue I didn't have to invent, because I'd transcribed it live for 2 years without knowing I was taking notes. Some women journal. I built a plot structure. And here's the thing, nobody warns you about turning your life into a book. It gave me somewhere to put the pain that wasn't my own body. Every night Aaron hurt me, I had a drawer to file it in now. A chapter, a line, a beat. He thought I was getting quieter because I was finally at peace with our arrangement. I was getting quieter because I was busy. I was in my creative zone. There's a difference, and he never once thought to check in between the pages. The book was for me, the folders were for him. Around the same time, I started keeping everything, and I started keeping it the boring way, because boring is what survives a search. No folder on my laptop said evidence. No folder said Aaron. They said invoices 2019. They said tax. They said miscellaneous, because nobody in the history of the world has ever opened a folder called miscellaneous. Inside them, I put the things he'd been handing me for 2 years without ever thinking of them as a trail. The screenshots, the ones I already had, 2 years of a man's appetite preserved in blue and gray. The hotel confirmations, because he always made me book, which felt like trust at the time, and turned out to be a paper trail with my own fingerprints on it. The gift receipts, because rich adjacent men return things and need the paperwork, and somewhere along the way I had quietly become the keeper of the paperwork. Restaurant reservations under my name. Voice notes, God the voice notes, hours of Aaron loving the sound of himself being gentle. I learned things I hadn't let myself learn before. Which card was his, and which one was theirs. That the apartment, my apartment, the quiet I'd been so grateful for, ran through an account with 2 names on it. That the rescue, the night a client stiffed me and Aaron made the loss disappear, had been paid from money that was half his wife's. That was the one that stopped me cold. I sat on my expensive floor with the printouts fanned around me and understood that Aaron wasn't just cheating on Kalina. He was spending her money to do it. Every flower, every spa day, every soft, regular deposit that let me keep my face in the mirror, all of it had 2 names on the account it came from, and only one of those names had ever met me. He hadn't just given his attention to someone who wasn't his wife. He'd been funding it with her name on the account, and an account remembers everything a heart conveniently forgets. Aaron handed me the next piece of information himself, the way he handed me everything. He just didn't know he was doing it. It was a bad night for him, which by then meant a good night for me. He came over already 3 drinks in, loose and ugly with it, dragging the whole bad day in behind him. There'd been a meeting. Kalina's people had been in the room, and Aaron did not like Kalina's people. He especially did not like one of them, a lawyer he kept calling her little attorney, who he said had looked at him across the table like staff. He dropped onto the couch and started in before I'd even handed him a drink. "You know what kills me?" he said. "I built the runway she took off from. Me. And now I sit in a room, and some woman in a department store blazer slides a folder across the table like I'm the one who needs managing." "What folder?" I said, light at the counter, my back to him, pouring. "Doesn't matter." He waved it off, and then kept talking because it mattered more than anything. "It's a scare tactic. They want me thinking that if I ever walked, I'd walk with nothing. Please, I know exactly what I'm owed. Every dollar in that house grew while I was standing right next to it." I brought him the glass and perched on the arm of the couch, close, the way you sit when you want a man to keep talking. "So walk with what you're owed," I said. "Half of everything. You earned it." "That's what I keep saying." He pointed at me with the wine like I'd discovered something. "Half. That's the law. You build it together, you split it together." Then his face went sour. "Except she got cute a few years back, had her people draw up a second agreement after we were already married, slipped a fidelity clause into it." I went very still, the way you go still when a deer steps out of the trees and you don't want to be the thing that spooks it. "A what?" I said, bored, still pouring. "A clause." He said it like it had a bitter taste. "Cheat, and the whole split changes. She put a leash in the paperwork and then wonders why we grew apart." I was taking all of this in like a witness to a crime. He laughed, and there was nothing under the laugh. "Right before her first real deal, you know that. The big one. The one that turned the whole thing into what it is now. We're sitting at the kitchen table and her lawyers got this agreement, real casual, just protecting the business. Sign here." And like an idiot, I signed. I'm the reason that deal even happened, and she had me sign away half of what it grew into the week before it grew. I want you to sit with that for a second, because I had to. He was 3 drinks deep on my couch, the one his wife's money paid for, calling a cheating clause an insult to his character. And he could not see it, not a flicker. The clause was a trap built for the exact thing he was doing in the exact moment he sat there complaining about it, and the woman he was complaining to was the other half of the trap. I really can't make this shit up. "She thinks that clause scares me," he said, to the ceiling, to the wine, to nobody. "It doesn't." "Of course it doesn't," I said, and I meant it to sound like comfort, and he took it as comfort, and it was the furthest thing from comfort I have ever said to anyone. I refilled the glass before he asked and steered him back to his favorite subject, which was himself. He climbed onto it gratefully and forgot the clause the way you forget a thing you've decided can't touch you. I did not forget. The second he was asleep, I sat in the dark with my phone and wrote down every word I could still hear in the miscellaneous folder. I didn't know yet what it was worth. I only knew I'd been with Aaron Greer for over 2 years and never once seen him scared of anything. And for 1 second, before the wine smoothed it back over, the clause had scared him. That was enough to start with. I took it to Amani the way you take a strange lump to a doctor, casually, like you're not already terrified of the answer. It was a Thursday, our Thursday, the same bar, the lighting I'd graded years ago. I waited until we were a glass in, and then I asked her like it was a crossword clue I'd half solved. Hypothetical, I said. Rich woman. Business took off after the marriage. Husband's no good. What does he walk away with if it ends? Imani put her glass down slowly, and she looked at me for a long moment, and I understood that I had not fooled her for 1 second. I never could. Whose marriage, Sable? She said. Not a hypothetical question. I didn't answer. She let the quiet do its work, the lawyer's habit, and this time, I was the one who filled it. Just tell me how it works, I said. She decided something behind her eyes, and then she told me, in the flat voice she used for delivering verdicts, the voice that had no give in it at all. Okay, if there's no clean agreement protecting what got built during the marriage, and the business exploded after they married, then in a normal split, he's circling half of everything that grew. That's why a man like the one you're describing waits. Every year he stays married, the company's worth more, and his half gets fatter. He's not stalling because he's torn. He's stalling because he's compounding. That landed somewhere under my ribs. 2 years of, the timing isn't right. He hadn't been failing to leave. He'd been letting the number ripen. But, Imani said, and she turned her glass a slow quarter turn on the napkin, the way she does right before she ends someone. Smart money doesn't leave that door open. Smart money writes a clause, an infidelity clause, and if there's one of those in play and he gets caught, half goes up in smoke. He doesn't get half, he gets capped. A lump sum, something small and humiliating, maybe 3% of the estate. Take it and go money. 3%, I said. On an estate the size you're hinting at, still tens of millions. Still more than you and I will see in a lifetime of honest work. She tilted her head. But it's not $500 million. It's not the number he's been doing all that waiting for. To a man like that, 3% isn't a settlement. It's an insult with a dollar sign. I was quiet. She wasn't finished. And it gets worse for him if somebody were inclined to make it worse. She said this carefully, watching me. If he spent marital money on the affair, her money, their money, then that spending comes out of his lump sum. Dollar for dollar. Every hotel, every gift, every soft little deposit he made to keep somebody comfortable, all of it gets traced and subtracted. A man can spend his own settlement down to nothing buying silence and never feel the meter running. How would anyone prove that? I said very evenly. They'd need the receipts. She looked at me, and there was no triumph in it, which by now you know is how Imani looks when she's most serious. Dates, transfers, hotels, all of it printed and matched to his lies. The wife's attorneys would build it in a week if somebody handed it to them. The firm she uses, I know them. They're the kind that writes those clauses airtight in the first place. If Kalina Greer has that clause, those are exactly the people who put it there. The room got very quiet around us, or maybe it didn't, and I just stopped hearing it. I didn't say Kalina Greer, I said. No, Imani said. You didn't. She picked her glass back up. I'm not going to ask you what's in your folders, Sable. I don't want to know, and I can't know. And there's a version of this where me knowing makes things worse for you instead of better. So I'm going to tell you one thing as your friend and not as anybody's lawyer, and then we're going to order food and talk about literally anything else. Okay. Whatever you're building, she said, build it clean. Don't steal anything. Don't break anything to get it. Use only what he handed you, and there is going to be a tremendous amount of it because men like that hand you everything and call it generosity. She held my eyes. If you do it clean, nobody can take it back from you. Not him, not her, not a judge. Clean is the whole game. And then, because she loved me, and because she always knew me a year or two before I knew myself, she added the part I'd carry out of that bar. You came in here asking how he loses. That's the right question. Just make sure you're not so busy answering it that you forget to ask how you win. I smiled. I couldn't help it. It wasn't a nice smile, and Imani saw it, and she didn't smile back. She just watched it happen on my face, the way you watch weather you can't stop coming in over a field. I want to tell you that what I felt walking out of that bar was grief, or fear, or even guilt. It would make me look better. What I felt was relief. The clean, cold relief of a person who has finally been handed the shape of the thing. Because here's what changed in me that night, and it changed for good. For 2 years, I had wanted one thing, the same desperate thing, over and over. I wanted Aaron to leave Kalina and choose me. Every excuse had been a small death of that one wish. And standing on the sidewalk outside that bar, I noticed that the wish was simply gone. Not healed, not resolved. Gone, the way a tooth is gone, with a strange, smooth socket where it used to ache. I no longer needed Aaron to leave his wife. I needed to make sure that when he did, he left poor enough to finally feel something. That was the whole objective now. Not love. Not even payback exactly. Correction. He had spent 2 years treating me like a line item, and his wife like an ATM, and his audience like a congregation, and I was going to balance the books he kept telling strangers about. Everything you do in the dark, he liked to say, goes on a ledger somebody eventually reads. I was going to be the somebody. After Aaron gave me more information than I needed, I got sweet. I got so sweet you could have called me honey. It should have scared him, and the fact that it didn't is the most honest thing I can tell you about Aaron Greer. For the next 12 months, I was the easiest woman in the world to be involved with. I stopped asking when he was leaving. I stopped keeping the calendar of broken promises out, where he could see it. When he talked about the future, I smiled and let it stay vague, and I watched the relief wash over him every single time, the relief of a man who thinks the hard part is behind him. He got so comfortable he started doing something he'd never done in 2 years of It's Not Time. He started planning. You know what we should do, he said one night, the way men say we when they've decided something alone. Get you out of this apartment, something with land, quiet, outside everything. He was lying on my couch with his eyes closed, building it on the ceiling. 40 minutes out where it's calm. Good air, a pool, the whole thing. You'd design every inch of it. 2 years I'd waited for this man to say a future out loud, and here it was, finally, arriving exactly when it no longer meant anything. He'd stopped offering me Tuesdays I could count on, and now he was offering me square footage. I'd love that, I said, and I watched him smile with his eyes still closed. Start looking, he said. Don't get crazy. Keep it under $1 million on paper. That's a number that won't make anybody ask questions. Then he told me what he'd actually go to, which was a good deal more than $1 million if the place was right. I'll move the money clean, call it an investment property. Nobody blinks at a man buying real estate. Nobody blinks at a man buying real estate. He said it to me like he was being clever. I filed it away with everything else. So I started looking. That's the part that still makes me laugh. I drove out past the last exit that means anything, to those built from nothing Atlanta suburbs where the houses have names and the lawns are all the same green. And I walked model homes with a sales agent who called me Mrs., and I let her. I took every brochure she handed me and kept all of them. Not because I wanted the house. Because a woman who's seriously house hunting is a woman who's clearly staying, and I needed Aaron believing I was staying for exactly as long as it took. And I stopped asking him for timelines and started asking him for money. On top of the weekly 2,000 or more he was already sending, the cash he wrote off in his own books as marketing, advertising, consulting fees, I started asking for more and asking often. Rent's gone up. The car needs work. I want to do something nice for the apartment. Small enough to never alarm him, regular enough to add up, ordinary enough that a man drowning in his own importance never once did the math. He loved it. He thought a calmer woman was a cheaper woman. He had it exactly backwards. Promises bounce, Zell clears. But here's the part he never understood, the part that was working even on the nights I asked him for nothing. For 3 years, that man had covered every cost of my life. The rent, the car, the clothes, the food, the travel, and the whole time, my own money, every check I earned designing other people's beautiful rooms, landed in my account and just stayed there, because there was nothing left for it to do. He thought he was keeping me. What he was really doing was paying my overhead so my own earnings could pile up in a corner he'd never think to look. He was the most expensive thing that ever happened to me, and somehow I was the one turning a profit. So I put the profit to work. An editor, a real one, who made my book bleed in the right places, a cover that looked like a confession, a website, a launch plan, a publicist's retainer, and a savings account at a bank Aaron had never heard me mention. He thought he was keeping me comfortable. He was financing the exit, paying down the mortgage on his own burial, one sweet little transfer at a time. The best afternoons were the ones where he'd come over, stretch out, complain about his day, and I'd rub his shoulders and ask soft questions and feel him relax under my hands. And the whole time, on the laptop closed on the kitchen counter, was a manuscript with his soul in it, and in a drawer in the bedroom was a folder named Utilities with his settlement in it, and he'd kiss me goodbye and drive home lighter, and I'd wave from the doorway and the door would close, and I would get back to work. Then, on a Monday in the spring, Imani told me she was leaving Atlanta. "I'm hanging my own shingle," she said, turning her wine glass that slow quarter turn. "Savannah. My own practice. My name on the door, no partners to answer to. Found office space and everything." She watched me over the rim of the glass. "You should come down and see it. Slower pace. Good light. You'd like the bones on those old houses. Good light. Good bones." She knew exactly what she was telling me, because Imani always knew what she was telling me. For months, I'd been driving past the perimeter, walking model homes I'd never live in, pretending to plan a life 40 minutes from a man I was about to bury. That night, I started looking for real, not where Aaron told me to. 3.5 hours southeast, in an old city he had no reason to think about, near the one person who told me the truth before I was ready for it. He thought he was buying me a house, and he was. It just wasn't going to be his house, in his city, for the woman he thought I still was. The book sold before I told a single soul it existed. I'd found the agent quietly. Renata Long, 20-some years in the business, the kind of woman whose voicemail says she only takes referrals and means it. I sent her the manuscript under a name that wasn't quite mine and waited, and 4 days later she called me from what was obviously a coffee shop because I could hear the espresso machine and I could hear, underneath it, that she'd been crying. Which is a strange thing to be proud of, and I was extremely proud of it. "Okay," she said, no hello. "Who are you and how much of this happened to you?" "It's fiction," I said. "Mm-hmm." A pause, the sound of a woman deciding not to push. "It's scandalous is what it is. I mean that as the highest compliment I have." Then, slower, the line that told me she knew exactly what she had. "Honey, I've read 1,000 novels about cheating men. They all read like the writer imagined it. This one reads like she billed him for it." I laughed. I didn't confirm anything. I'd learned that from watching Aaron do the opposite for 2 years. "It's going to be a thing," Renata said. "You understand me? People are going to want to know who he is. What are you going to tell them?" "That it's fiction," I said. "Good girl, keep saying that." I told her it was fiction. I told everyone it was fiction. It was, technically, the truth. The way a lie with good posture is technically standing up straight. Fiction is just truth wearing sunglasses and a wig. We had a working title for a while that I loved too much to keep, because it gave away more than I wanted. 3% of everything, I changed it before we went out with it. Some jokes you only get to make to yourself. The beta readers, a handful of strangers who read it early, all circled the same thing in their own words. It feels real. It feels like she's writing about somebody. One of them emailed me a single careful line, asking if I was okay, the way you ask a friend you're a little worried about. I told her I'd never been better, and for once, I wasn't performing. I had taken the worst years of my life and turned them into the one thing I'd wanted since before Aaron Greer ever carried a ring light into a furniture store. I was going to be an author. I was going to be read. There was only one thing left to decide, and Renata decided it for me. I want to publish you in the spring, she said. 4 months out. That's fast, but this one shouldn't sit. Things this hot go cold if you wait. She wanted to announce it early, get ahead of the buzz. I told her to keep it dark until launch. No press, no name, nothing with my face on it. She thought I was being modest, protecting a debut author's nerves. Trust me, I said. The timing matters more than the noise. 4 months. I did the math without telling her I was doing it. 4 months was enough time to close on a house, hand a woman a bag, and be 300 miles gone before a single stranger read the first page. 4 months is perfect, I said. She thought I meant the book. He told me once on a Saturday, in front of a chair I couldn't afford, that I looked at a room like I was correcting it. He had no idea I'd started looking at my whole life that way. I told Aaron I was going to Savannah to help Imani set up her new office. That part was even true. Imani had signed a lease on a corner suite downtown, the kind of restored building with original heart pine floors and 12-foot windows, and she'd asked me to make it look like a place people could trust with the worst weeks of their lives. So I packed swatches and a tape measure and drove 3.5 hours south, and I did exactly what I said I'd do. I designed my best friend a law office. I just did one other thing while I was down there. Imani had known for weeks. She'd known since the night I called her and said the word Savannah out loud for the first time, and she'd been 3 steps ahead of me ever since, because that is what Imani is for. By the time I came down, we weren't deciding anything. We were just working out the how. The first night, sitting on a paint-spattered drop cloth in her half-finished office, eating takeout off our knees, we ran the logistics like we'd run everything else for 20 years. "You're buying it with his money," she said. Not a question. "With the money he's wiring me for a house. I'm just buying a different house." "Okay, his name never touches the deed," she said, around a forkful. "You pay cash, you buy in your name only, and there's nothing for anybody to unwind later. That's the whole reason we're doing it this way." Cash, I know. And buy ugly. She pointed the fork at me. Something nobody else at the showing can see. You'll get it for less and make it worth triple, and that's the one part of this I actually can't wait to watch. Then she smiled, softer than usual. "Call Marcus in the morning. He found my office and my house, and he closes faster than anybody in this city." "How fast?" "Fast enough." Something moved across her face, a little softer than her usual. "Just, fair warning, he's going to find a reason to ask about me. Tell him I said hello and watch the man lose his train of thought." Marcus turned out to be our age, easy and unhurried, with a handshake that lasted a half-second longer when I mentioned I was Imani's friend. He did, in fact, find 3 separate reasons to ask how she was settling in. I told him she said hello and watched a grown man rearrange his whole face to keep from grinning. Whatever was happening there, it was mutual, and it was none of my business, and I filed it under things I was glad still existed in the world. He also did exactly what she promised. He walked me through 4 houses, asked nothing he didn't need to, and when I picked the one I wanted, he moved. It didn't look like much from the street. That was the point. A narrow brick row house, south of the squares, tired, a little crooked, with a sad beige paint job and good bones underneath that nobody else at the showing could see. I could. Seeing them is the whole job. I stood in the empty front room while the afternoon light came in low and gold through those tall old windows, and for the first time in 3 years, I thought about a room that was going to be mine. The money was already mine before I ever drove south. Weeks earlier, back in Atlanta, I'd told Aaron I'd found it. The place 40 minutes out. The one with the land and the air and the pool he was already bragging about to himself. He didn't ask to see it. Of course he didn't. He wired the $250,000 for the investment property, labeled clean exactly the way he'd promised, so nobody would ask questions, and he moved it the same afternoon, proud of how smooth he was. A man that pleased with his own discretion does not drive out to check on a house. He just likes knowing he paid for one. So when I shook Marcus's hand in Savannah, $250,000 was already sitting in my account, sent for a house with a pool I would never own, in a town I had no intention of living in. The row house was $390,000. In that part of the city, fixed up, it should have been $600 and up, and Marcus told me so twice because he wanted me to understand what I was getting. The only reason it was cheap was that it was rough, peeling, crooked, a kitchen from another decade, the kind of place buyers walk through making faces. I walked through it doing math. Aaron's $250,000 covered most of it. I put my own savings on top to close, in cash, in full, and I still had enough set aside to make it beautiful on my own dime, which felt important. The walls he paid for, the life inside them would be mine. 12 days after I first shook Marcus's hand on a quiet Wednesday morning, I closed on a house Aaron would never see, in a city he had no reason to visit, near the one person who'd warned me about him before I was ready to listen. The deed went in my name. Only my name. The first thing in 3 years with only my name on it. Let me be clear, because I've been clear about everything else. That was his money, given freely, wired on purpose, for a house. I just bought a different house. Imani had told me to keep it clean, use only what he handed me, and he had handed me a down payment and called it love. The house was mine. The book was coming. The folders were full. All I needed now was a room to do it in and a reason to be there. Aaron, generous to the very end, was about to hand me both. He handed me the last piece himself, the way he'd handed me everything. It was an unexpected Sunday visit, 9 days after I closed in Savannah, and he was lying in my bed scrolling through his phone like the room was a waiting area. "I've got a thing with Kalina Thursday," he said, not looking up. "Lunch. Don't blow up my line during it. It's a whole, family thing." "What kind of family thing?" "Reconnecting." He said the word with a little curl of distaste, like it cost him something. "Her idea. She's been on this whole let's get back to us thing. Counselor told her couples need rituals." He snorted. "So now we have lunch." I kept my voice in the flat, bored register I'd perfected. "That's sweet." "It's a performance." He set the phone on his chest. "You want to know the truth? I think she's testing me. She gets quiet, she watches, and then out of nowhere it's, let's reconnect, baby. Let's have lunch. Women do that when they think they've got something." He laughed, short and ugly. "She doesn't have anything. I've been careful." I almost laughed myself, because I was sitting in the careful. Hell, I was the careful. I already owned a house 3 hours away that he'd helped pay for and would never see, and a folder in the next room held everything he swore his wife couldn't possibly know. And there he was, on the couch I picked out, telling me she had nothing. "Where's the lunch?" I said like I was making conversation. "Some quiet place she likes. Cordova, in Buckhead, no windows, hush hush." He waved a hand. "Her kind of room. Everybody whispering, $400 fish." Cordova. I knew Cordova. I'd designed a room there once, a private one with no windows, for a client who wanted a space where secrets stayed put. I knew the lighting because I'd spec'd lighting like it. Warm, low gold pushed against the walls so it never reached the middle of the table. I knew the kind of money that ate in that room, and I knew exactly what kind of quiet they were paying for. And I knew, the second he said the name, that it was perfect. Private, so there'd be no security tackling anyone, no scene to film and spin. Public enough that Aaron couldn't fully come apart, because a man like Aaron does not make a sound in a room where the staff might talk. And elegant, which mattered most, because I'd already decided that whatever I did, I was going to do it with manners. Manners are the cruelest thing you can carry into a room full of a guilty man. "What time?" I said. 1. He picked the phone back up, already bored of telling me. "Why?" he asked with a raised brow. "No reason. I'll keep my text to myself, give you two some privacy." With a little more sugar on it, I said, "I don't want to be the cause of your phone going off at the wrong time." "That's my girl." He didn't hear it. He never heard anything that wasn't about him. "See? This is why it works with you. You get it. She makes everything a whole production, and you let a man breathe." "I do," I said. "I let you breathe." I rubbed his feet and told him to have a nice lunch with his wife. He fell asleep on my bed 20 minutes later, mouth open, phone face down on his chest. He had no idea that every door in his life had been wired to the same switch, and that the woman he thought he'd handled was holding it. 4 days. The lunch was Thursday. That gave me 4 days to put on the only lunch party I'd ever really wanted to throw. I meant it too, what I told him. I really did intend for them to have a nice lunch, right up until the part where I arrived. I spent the days before that lunch shopping for a bag, which is a sentence that sounds frivolous and was the opposite. It had to be the right one. Cream, because cream photographs like innocence, and I had thought about photographs. Big enough to hold a hardcover book and an envelope, structured enough to sit on a chair and look like it belonged there. It cost more than my first car. That felt correct because of what I was going to put inside it. The book went in first. A finished early copy, my name on the spine, the cover that looked like a confession. The envelope went underneath. Inside the envelope was the year of folders, printed and ordered and matched, every transfer beside the lie it paid for, every hotel beside the night he'd sworn he was somewhere else, a timeline down the left margin, the way I build a project schedule, except the project was a marriage and the schedule was its autopsy. I did it clean, the way Amani said. Nothing stolen, nothing broken into. Only what he'd handed me, which was everything, because that's what men like Aaron do. They hand you everything and call it generosity. And on top of it all, one folded note. I won't read you the whole thing yet. You'll hear it where it belongs, in the room, in the gold light, over his shoulder while he chokes on his water. But I'll tell you how it started, because I wrote that first line a dozen times before I got it cold enough. This is not my apology. I sealed the envelope. I set the book on top of it. I closed the bag. Then I picked out my outfit. The way you pick out what you'll wear to the most important meeting of your life, which is what it was, except I was the only one who'd RSVP'd knowing it. People want this to be the part where I felt conflicted, where I lay awake the night before, wrestling with my conscience, wondering if I'd become a monster. I slept fine. For 12 months, I had smiled in that man's face and kissed him with screenshots in my phone and let him fund, dollar by sweet little dollar, the book and life that was about to bury him. I had taken the worst thing that ever happened to me and turned it into a hardcover, a folder, and a reservation I hadn't made but fully intended to attend. I was not conflicted. I was finished, in both senses. And there is no feeling on this earth quite like being finished. The morning of the lunch, I dressed like I was walking into a room I owned, because in every way that mattered, I was. Black first, a fitted mock neck that covered me to the wrist and the throat, because I wasn't going there to be looked at. Over it, a strapless bodice in cream, structured, the kind of seam that holds its own shape whether you're breathing or not. Then the trousers, high-waisted, wide enough to move like water when I walked, cream and black swerving down the length of them in a print that looked like chaos until you noticed every line knew exactly where it was going. A wide black hat with a brim that made people decide, before I said a word, how much of my face they were allowed to see. Nude heels, quiet ones, gold at the ears, nothing soft, nothing that asked permission, black and cream, and not one apologetic color in the whole arrangement, because I had not gotten dressed to be forgiven. The bag came last, and against all that black it read exactly the way I wanted, like the only innocent thing in the room. I checked it one more time. Then I called a car, and I gave the driver the name of a quiet, expensive place with no windows and very good light, where my married boyfriend was, at that exact moment, reconnecting with his wife. He had no idea I was coming. That was always going to be the best part.
It's time for lunch. And Aaron has no idea he's on the menu.
And there it is, Dreadfuls. Sable Monroe did not spend this episode falling apart. She spent it becoming a project manager for revenge. The book was written, the folders were full, the house in Savannah was bought, deeded, and waiting with only her name on it. And the bag? Oh, that pretty cream bag was packed with the kind of gift no married man wants his wife to receive. Aaron thought he was funding comfort. He thought he was buying patience. He thought every transfer, every hotel, every soft little lie was just another part of the arrangement. But Sable had stopped seeing gifts. She saw inventory. And by the time he handed her the name of that quiet, expensive restaurant, he had done what careless men always do. He gave the woman he underestimated directions to the exact room where his life could come undone. So if you're living for the betrayal, the money math, the mistress with a manuscript, the house he bought but will never see, and a wife about to receive a luxury bag with consequences at the bottom, hit that like button. Share this with somebody who knows a quiet woman is not always calm. Sometimes she is closing. Sometimes she is packing. Sometimes she is already dressed. And subscribe to Sin Dreadful Darling, because next time Sable walks into Cordova with cream on her body, black on her mind, and not one apologetic color in the whole arrangement. Tap that bell so you don't miss what happens next. Because Aaron Greer is already at lunch, Sable is already on her way. And that bag is heavier than it looks.